And as we on the Public Safety Committee listened to the issues that our towns were having, our police departments were having, this was one that we were aware of, or at least I was aware of. And this piece of legislation is going to be, I guess, the first piece of the puzzle of putting together a group to solve this problem. And it just doesn't come in the form of cars taking over the road for maybe an illegal street race. It comes in the form of large organized events, whether it's motorcycles like the R1s or the Harley Davidson, and then you have another set or group of individuals that may have dirt bikes or quads or ATVs, if that is the right term. So there's a lot of issues that are happening, and unfortunately, our police departments don't have the resources to address this. Just specifically, one incident, I believe it was in New Haven, I believe it was more of a motorcycle organized event, cost New Haven, I think it was over $80,000 in overtime in a weekend. And there was damage to public and private property. And this is happening every single day. So creating the task force in Hartford, again, as I said, is the first step, as this isn't just happening in Hartford and the surrounding towns in Hartford. This is happening all over the state of Connecticut and really all over the place. Other states are having these same issues. Senator Martin spoke about some other amendment that's in another bill that's going to address a piece of this, and I believe that legislation came from California. So this is an issue across the country, and it's dangerous. It's not just dangerous to the individuals or the kids that are doing the racing or the tricks on the dirt bikes or quads. We had an incident in East Haven where it was an organized event, and there was dirt bikes, quads, ATVs driving down a main road. And all the police could do, because they couldn't pursue, was basically stop people from entering that main roadway. And as they drove by, they knew the police couldn't do anything, and they were being highly disrespectful. It was all caught on video. But something else happened. As they were coming into a smaller part of the road, they started going onto private property to get by. And as somebody came out the front door, they fell. It was an older woman, I believe she broke a bone. And it was probably about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was on the news, especially when the officer had to get involved because two of the motorcycles collided. So it was a very big incident, and it's happening everywhere. We talked about, again, the three different types of road takeovers for the purpose of these illegal street races or shows, essentially, trick shows or whatever they're doing when they're doing wheelies, etc. It's my understanding that this is very well organized. It's done in advance, and it's done using social media. And the reason why this task force is needed and other task forces throughout the state are needed is to gather intelligence, to be able to understand when, in fact, this is happening, and then be able to put together a team, and that's what this task force is going to do. It's going to be able to partner with other local and federal law enforcement to put together the resources to address a possible issue that may arise. And if they do that and they're there before the event starts, it will not have the opportunity to grow and then become extremely dangerous and more violent. Just in New Haven, East Haven line, there was one of these type of street races that was happening on, I believe it was Route 80, and all of the vehicles that would eventually race were waiting in a parking lot. I believe it was a Walmart or Lowe's parking lot, and they start doing donuts and different things, and it turned out to be a shooting there. And unfortunately, the police couldn't even respond fast enough because there were so many cars in the way and so many cars in the street that EMS couldn't get there to respond. And they're forced to try to figure out what happened after the fact, where this piece of legislation is going to allow them to be proactive and address something that is affecting all of our towns and cities within the state of Connecticut. Through you, Madam President, I just have a couple of questions for the good proponent of the bill that helped put this together along with the Public Safety Committee.
Please proceed.
It's my understanding that we're going to maybe use this as a model and implement this in other cities throughout the state. Was that also your understanding, that this would be expanded on if we found this to be fruitful and useful as a tool for the law enforcement to use to combat the problem that we're facing here in Connecticut? Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Gaston.
Through you, I have the utmost respect for our law enforcement community and know that they will do a yeoman's job in the Hartford Regional Task Force to address this particular concern that's not just in the Hartford area, but they're taking the steps in the right direction to ensure that other towns and municipalities could adopt the same kind of strategies once they gather the intelligence and we can see how effective it's happening in Hartford. I'm certainly sure that with that success, that other towns and bigger cities will jump onto this great initiative. I do believe that's the spirit of the bill, and that's the intent of the committee.
Thank you, Senator Cicarella.
Thank you, Madam President. And that was also my understanding. And I do know that there were many people that were also saying, well, what about us? That's Hartford County, but what about Fairfield County? And just want to let them know that we are understanding there's a need and have the willingness to expand this into other areas. And I'm sure that this task force will, if they have knowledge of another event taking place or some type of illegal activity taking place in another area, they will, I'm assuming, utilize the resources that were provided to help these other areas in other cities. The type of assistance that the police departments need, the state or municipal police departments need, come in the form of resources. There's not enough officers currently in these departments. We realize there is an all-time shortage of police officers, forcing some of these officers to work doubles and multiple double shifts in a row just to make sure that they're manning the mandatory patrol. And there isn't the resources when something like this is coming into a town to properly correct response to something that is going to be before them as a challenge to the rest of the constituents within the town. So part of this is going to come in the form of resources, which is money. Do you happen to have an understanding of what the total cost of the task force would be to the state of Connecticut, through you, Madam President?
Senator Gaston.
Through you, what we see is that the potential cost to the state is roughly $146,081 for the fiscal year 2024. Also sort of factoring in the cost of inflation for subsequent years to follow at $149,734 as a potential cost to the Hartford Police Department, and $187,000 for fiscal year 24 and 25, and a potential cost to municipalities in the Greater Hartford region in both years. So looking at those numbers and figures in the grand scheme of things, we're not talking about an astronomical amount of resources here, but certainly it is going to cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next 2 years.
Senator Cicarella.
Thank you for answering that question, and I do agree that that's a small price to pay to have the organization and structure and leadership with this task force to implement some of the tactics that they have at their disposal while having the resources. And it's my understanding that with this task force in place, they could apply for maybe other grants that could be out there to continue to fund any maybe equipment or technology or manpower for certain things that may be coming into the state of Connecticut. With this allotted money for the task force, that's going to be utilized for manpower to create a position or a supervisor to oversee this. Through you, Madam President, any understanding of how they're going to put together the task force and what resources they would use in the way of manpower from local police departments? Do you have any understanding of how they'll put together that task force? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Gaston.
Yes, through you, Madam President. This bill basically would allow the Department of Emergency Service and Public Protection to appoint a commanding officer and other personnel that's deemed necessary to the task force. I also understand that the State Police Master Sergeant could also be appointed, and 2 additional state police troopers that will be working 10 hours per week on the task force.
Senator Cicarella.
Thank you, Madam President. And so there are multiple different types of task forces that are out there when it comes to law enforcement. Sometimes we hear about a working group or a task force here in this circle or in this building, but a task force when it comes to law enforcement purposes, or for this specific type of a task force, there are many other task forces that the police department utilizes or have put together. And it's my understanding that this is going to operate the same way. So there are cyber intelligent task forces, there's anti-gang task forces, there's anti-violence task forces, there's drug task forces. And it's my understanding that when they establish this type of a group, then they could go to the other departments around the area and be able to recruit with the cooperation of the municipality, maybe an officer to say, you may put in 10 hours, or be able to leverage that manpower if an event is coming up. Is it your understanding that this will be operated and manned very similar to the other task forces that the police department and our law enforcement use all the time throughout the state of Connecticut? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Gaston.
Through you, what I can tell you is that this does give DEFs the opportunity and the ability to appoint individuals with whom they feel necessary to be a part of this task force. Presumably, many of these individuals will be of law enforcement background. I would imagine that they would use all of the resources at their disposal to ensure the effectiveness and efficacy of this process. And I would also venture to say that the task force would utilize every piece of intelligence at its disposal in a very robust fashion, similar to some of the other task forces to which you just mentioned.
Senator Cicarella.
Thank you, Madam President. And I absolutely agree that this is intended to do that same thing. And I think that there would be a tremendous amount of support and buy-in with the local municipalities as they're also facing these same issues, whether it's West Hartford, Farmington, East Hartford. There are numerous areas that have this. It's not just the cities, it's the suburbs. And just like there's task forces for accident reconstruction, normally they're put together of experts, of officers that are trained on a specific type of area, whether it's accident reconstruction, whether it's a drug recognition officer. There's multiple different task forces that get put together, and they pool their resources, like a SWAT team. We have a regional SWAT team in North Haven with East Haven, Branford, Wallingford, and a few other towns. And I think that this is going to be a great collaborative effort with the local police departments to work with the state police and this task force to address these issues that are facing our Connecticut residents. And I'm hopeful to see that this will be expanded upon and be able to address a lot of these other issues that all of our other cities and towns are facing every day. I think it's a great piece of legislation, and it's a step in the right direction to address some very serious concerns of our constituents. And I urge support of the bill before us. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator, for answering my questions, getting clarification, and working with the Public Safety Committee to make sure we got this across the finish line. Good piece of legislation. Thank you.